Hi everyone. Let me get this set up. Okay, so Professor Dunn again here, and what I'm doing is making a short little video and focusing really on some of the cave paintings in Europe, particularly from the south of France here and the northern part of Spain. So the first one I'm going to show you is the spotted horses with human hands, and this is located in the south of France, and the date is 25,000 to 24,000 BCE, and then you'll see the hands are actually much later. And if you watch the video, you know that the C here it means circa, or about 15,000 BCE, so they're added later. So let me move, I don't know if you see my little timer up here going, so let me move this over slightly. And I'll show you the horse. So this is the horse's head, and here's the body, the back side of the horse, the two front legs, and the underside of the horse, and a back leg here. And then we have another horse overlapping that where we just have the back side and the legs here of the horse. Okay, so when you look at this horse, a couple of things probably stand out to you. One, look at the legs in relationship to the body. The legs are way too tiny, and the head is also too small. So we would say that this animal is not in proportion. The legs do not match the body, or the head does not match the body. The other thing, excuse me, the other thing that you'll probably notice right away are the spots, because we don't have horses that look like this. So for many years it was thought that the spots were just decorative, but then they found some more fossils and they were able to do some DNA testing and stuff, and they found out that there actually were spotted horses that were in this area of France dating to this approximate time period. So this is probably what the animals look like. So that's kind of interesting, at least to me. Then the other thing to note are the hands. Okay, so the horses were drawn, with some were painted with some kind of natural material like charcoal, or they would have been using like ochre or something like that, which is like clay ground up and mixed with water, and they're painted with that. The hands were created by placing the hand against the wall and then taking charcoal and mixing it with water or even saliva, and then blowing it through a hollow reed or a hollow bone across the back of the hand, and then removing the hand so that you see the negative image of the hand. And in this way it's done like a stencil. Now there's been a lot of research recently on these hands, and they figured that when you look at your hands, women and men have different ratios of your index finger and your ring finger. And when they looked at the ratio of the index finger and the ring finger, they actually were able to determine that more than 70% of the hands were female. So this is very interesting, because we kind of had this, or at least I had this when I went to school, this kind of mindset that these were most likely done by men. We have no way to tell who painted the horses, whether it was female or male, but at least the majority of the hands we know were done by female. And we have a hand here, a hand here, a hand here, and kind of a remnant of a hand here, and if we look really closely we probably can even find more hands. Alright, that's not gonna, hang on, I want to move forward and look at the next image here. And so here we have this painting that has been created by putting in many animals. And the one thing is with this painting is you have animals that are of different sizes, different orientation. They're not standing on one kind of ground line. Like if I said go outside and make a painting of what you see, you'd probably put a line, and this is where the sky and the land are meeting, and you'd stick the stuff that's on the land, and the things in the sky, right? But here there's nothing like that. There's no kind of ground line they're standing on. You also have these kind of groupings of animals where here you have these horses and they're shaded in and they're overlapping, which gives this kind of sense of depth or perspective into the painting. It looks like they're leaning forward, so it looks like they're in motion running. And then down here you have these two rhinoceroses hitting each other, right? They're fighting, and they're not shaded in, they're just contour lines or outlines. And they're lower, they're lower in the painting, so we have this idea that they would be in front of the horses, but yet when you look at the size of the horses in relationship to the rhinoceroses, that this doesn't match. The rhinos should be bigger, right, because they're closer. And then certainly this one is way too small to be so close to these horses. And this one is shaded in, and these are this ancient form of an ox, and these two are shaded in, and we don't have these complete bodies, they're just heads like the horses. So why are there so many different elements here in this image? Well, one theory is that this was not painted by one person, but in fact by many people and over many years. It could have been, a couple of years, or it could have been decades, that these people are returning again and again to this location to create these animals. So this might be why we have these different kind of interpretations of how to create these animals, and this different orientation of how to place the animals into the painting. This is in the south of France. This cave is called Lascaux, and it is probably the most famous of all the caves in the south of France and north of Spain. Circa 15,000 BCE this was created, and this is one of the most famous of the rooms of this cave, called the Hall of Bulls. So once again, we have many different animals overlapping, some shaded in, some just outlines, some going right, some going left, no real ground line. So the same thing, we can make the assumption that this image or these images were made over the course of many years, probably by many different people. Now I want to focus on just this one bull, and I want to show you this bull to explain to you what a composite image is. So this bull is in profile for the most part. We have the body of it from the side. We have the four legs shown, a head with one eye. This is correct. Although once again, out of proportion. The legs are too small, the head is too small. They're focusing on the side of the animal. So it could be that they're hunting this animal, so they're showing, this is the yummy part that we eat. We're not sure, because again, at this time period, there's no written language, so it's a little hard to speculate why things are done certain ways. We do know that not this image of this bull, but in other caves, other locations, there was wet clay on the ground. The ground was wet, and we have footprints that were left, and some were of adult size and some were of children. And those paintings actually have marks as though spears were thrown at them. So we can speculate that some of these images were created and then children practiced hunting skills before actually going out and hunting. So we know that some of the paintings were used like that. But what I want to focus on here are the horns. The horns are not done in profile. The horns are done in what we would say is a 3/4 view. Because if the horns were done correctly in profile, we would only see one horn. But instead we see two. So we see the body in profile, and the horns in a 3/4 view. And this makes it look like the horn is actually coming out kind of from the back of the head and then one from the forehead, which is not how these horns grow. But the artist who created this was trying to give the most amount of information possible to the viewer about this animal. If they drew it in true profile, then somebody viewing this animal, if they had never seen it before, they might go out and look for an animal that had one horn. So they're trying to give you the information that has 2 horns. We will see this idea of composite images, meaning images put together in multiple perspectives, throughout the ancient art, and particularly in Egypt when we get to Egyptian art. If you know Egyptian art at all and you think of how they depicted figures, that is a composite image. And when we get to the Egyptian art, I'll come back to this idea of composite imagery. And this is what we would call a relief sculpture. So they came into this cave and there were these kind of things sticking out already out of the ceiling. So they chipped away at them and they shaped them a little bit, and then they painted them so that they look like bison. And because this 3-dimensional object is still attached to the back, it is called a relief sculpture. This is different than a sculpture that you can walk around, that you can see from all sides and is now carved away the background completely. That would be called a sculpture in the round. One more image here. Actually, my favorite of these. So for this, they make these 2 bison, and we're in France, again, circa 13,000 BCE. And the ground when this was created was wet clay. Excuse me. So the ground was wet clay. They walked into the cave, they found the wet clay, and we actually have footprints around this too. And they sculpted these bison in the clay, and they've really beautifully done. The best proportion out of the animals that we've seen today. Very detailed with the fur, the mane, the eyes, the horns, the nostril here. Very detailed information given. And then over thousands of years, the humidity in the cave changed and the clay dried. And this is why you have some cracking that has taken place in the clay, and it preserved the footprints that were on the ground, because when it dries, then it becomes hard. So we're able to find out a lot of information about these people during this time period that created these images, even though they don't have a written language. So some of it's speculation, we can't be 100% sure, and there are new things that are found all the time that help give us more information about these early people. Okay, so that's it for the first video. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you soon.